All right, so today what we're talking about the Tang and Song dynasties. So go ahead and write down new section title, Tang and Song dynasties. So we're going to write down Tang and Song dynasties as our new section title and underline them. After you underline Tang and Song dynasties, the first dynasty we're going to talk about is going to be the Tang dynasty. That does come first. So go ahead and make a bullet and write down Tang dynasty, and then we'll write down the years as well, 618 to 907. So bullet Tang dynasty, 618 to 907. So the Tang dynasty is originally started off by a general who overthrows the previous dynasty. So previous dynasty gets overthrown. Tang dynasty takes over. And then a general is the one who takes it over. He names it the Tang dynasty, which basically means a great ancestor. So general takes over, names Tang dynasty, pretty much means great ancestor. And then the Tang dynasty for the government there, the capital of the Tang dynasty is going to be Chiang. It's kind of like it's not quite on the coastline, it's kind of in the interior parts of China. And when the government kind of gets going for the Tang dynasty, they use a lot of civil service exams. I'm going to make a 1, and I'll explain what this means. 1 civil service exams. What civil service exams meant was that if you wanted to be in government, you would take a test. If you did well enough on the test, hey, you're a government worker now. Once you became a government worker, you are now allowed to work in the same areas that you are from. Okay, so if I'm from Columbus, Indiana, and I did real well on this test to be part of the government, I couldn't work then in Columbus, Indiana. I did work in some other place. The reason for that was to make sure that government officials, when they were put in charge, that they didn't know the people that they were working for and therefore not favoring certain people and such. You're also limited to terms of 3 years, so you'd be working in a place for 3 years, and then they would have you move to a new place, to another district. Reason for that was to keep people from building up a power base in one area and then using that power base to then try to overthrow the government and such. So it was to limit down people's power bases while they had to rotate every 3 years. A lot of the military system that they had for China at this time period of the Tang Dynasty was mainly based on militias. I'll explain what militias are. Go ahead and make a 2 and write down military based on militia. And for the militia system of the Chinese, basically what militia system means is that instead of having an army that trains year-round in combat, instead how it works is that whenever they need soldiers for the military, they would just pick up people from various villages and such, train them up, and then have an army. So if there's ever like an invader from like the north, they would just kind of pick up people from the countryside, like various militia groups that did some training. They would pick up people from those groups and then put them into organized force. So a militia group is really just a group with some training or some people they kind of drafted into the military, and then they kind of put them into a military force. So they're not a standing army that trains you around in combat. And instead, they're just people that have somewhat of training, or in other cases, really not much training at all. The system that they made, most of the revenue system, was based on a land tax. Go ahead and make a 3. And we're going to write down revenue system based on land tax. But land tax, what we're talking about there is that people would get taxed on the amount of land that they owned. So that's what they'd be taxed on. So kind of based on how much land you own, that's how much your tax was. And that's mainly how the government made money at this time period, well, one of the ways they made money at this time period was through the land tax. And land tax, that could work either by you paying the amount of money or by you giving a certain percentage of your crops to the government. So if you're a farmer, you would give a percentage of however much you grew of your crops to the government as a payment or a tax. And so that's how you would pay your tax. Next thing here that says is that the government had a monopoly on salt, tea, and liquor. I have to explain what a monopoly is. Go ahead and make a 4 and write down monopoly. So when someone has monopoly, just like in a game of Monopoly, a game of Monopoly is to control all the hotels, all the property on the board. And so that's the goal of Monopoly, to control the board, control the properties, control all the hotels. So what a monopoly is just when you control all of one thing. So if the government has monopoly on salt, tea, and liquor, that just meant that the government had control over all the salt, all the tea, and all the liquor in the country. That allowed them to kind of set prices that they wanted to set, which allowed them to also generate money for the government. All right, so the monopoly that the government had on salt, tea, and liquor allowed them to set the prices as they want, and then they could basically collect the profits off of that salt, tea, and liquor as an extra tax that would go to the government. So after the word monopoly, make equal sign and write down own all of one item. So we got 4, monopoly, and an equal sign, own all of one item. So when you're talking about a monopoly, it's just when you own all of one thing. All right, let me show you some pictures of a couple of things here. So in the Tang Dynasty here, for our pictures and so forth, a lot of the art we're going to see is going to be based on like glazed pottery. There's also kind of focus on making human figurines, although this figurine is of a horse, but a lot of focuses on human figurines and kind of working also on monochromatic and kind of having items like that. Monochromatic is kind of like one color, kind of what that means. So first one here, we have a dish in the shape of a leaf. So that's kind of a dish in the shape of a leaf. So you can kind of see what that looks like. And then we also have this right here called Night Shining White. So that's what this picture is of here, what it's called. Next thing here, on the left-hand side, we have a phoenix-headed ewer. So it's kind of like a phoenix-headed jar, basically. The phoenix in Chinese legend. Now, I believe in European legends, the phoenix can die and then be reborn. I don't believe that's true in China. I don't think that's quite a belief they have in the Chinese stories, but you still do have phoenixes as well in Chinese mythology. Not quite the same as in European mythology, but very similar. If you don't know what a phoenix is, it's basically a flying firebird. That's what it is, basically. This is a floral medallion. This is for kind of religion. So this is a Buddha. So it's kind of seated Buddha, although his hands are somewhat missing in the pictures you can see. And then we have what's called a court lady. So a court lady would just be basically a lady that lives in like the emperor's court, lives in his palace, basically. All right. Some of the kind of poets from this time period, Lai Bai and Bu Fu. So those are kind of some of the poets in this area and such. You can see down here, I have a little more information about kind of poetry. It talks about how, let's say, the 8-line poems with 5 or 7 words in each line. So kind of a little more information there about kind of poems and such. But that's kind of how they write the poetry and such. All right. Let's go ahead and stop there for a sec.